The elevator clattered like a freight coffin being lowered straight into the earth. I'd been handed the key card, the clipboard, and an order stamped so many times it looked ancient itself. Project Falcon, facility closure and decontamination. Simple in theory, sign forms, photograph debris, tag hardware for disposal. The metal cage shuddered to a halt 3 stories down, and the doors hissed open onto air that hadn't moved since the Cold War. Dust motes hung there like fragments of old orders, waiting to be obeyed. My flashlight beam ricocheted off rusted lockers, and a slogan painted in peeling white: "Obedience is victory." Pipes moaned far above. It didn't smell like decay. It smelled like battery acid and the inside of a transmitter. The silence pressed so hard against my ears it made me raise the radio on my shoulder just to hear something, anything. Static answered, slow, glacial, alive. Then a voice unfolded inside the crackle. Monotone, deliberate. Not random bursts, words. Command Post 4, awaiting confirmation, condition yellow. I froze beside a filing cabinet warped by time. No one was logged on the frequency. The bunker had been offline since 1987. Another burst came, smaller now but certain. Proceed with decontamination protocol. Do not abandon your post. Every training lecture I'd ever tuned out came back at once, about feedback loops, ghost signals drifting through ionospheric bounce. But this wasn't bounce, it was instruction. My own ID number printed on the tag looped to my suit began repeating through the speaker, each digit careful, like recitation. The radio was identifying me. I told myself it was a fluke and killed the power switch. The dial dimmed, but the voice whispered one last word before dying into silence. Confirmed. The air drank the sound. Somewhere deeper, a generator coughed awake. 2 days earlier, the assignment had sounded sterile on paper. Routine environmental decommission. That's what the clerk called it while sliding the folder across the counter. She didn't notice the red ink stamp, classified until 2089, staring back at me. Government work attracts people who don't ask questions. I'd become one of them. 3 pay grades above janitor, 1 below respected. A perfect fit for cleaning history's leftovers. The drive out to the site was uneasy silence, just the drone of tires through thawing snow. Ohio farmland blurred into pine. When GPS lost signal, an old green sign appeared. Federal property, restricted area, no entry without authorization. My authorization had been faxed that morning. Of course it had. Everything about Cold War relics still smelled like paper and ozone. Past the gate, the road turned to gravel. The bunker's surface entrance looked more like a weather-stained shed with a keypad beside the door. I entered the given code, 021962, someone's anniversary with the apocalypse. Locks thumped inward. A hiss of released pressure greeted me as though the building exhaled after a long nap. Inside the antechamber, rust had conquered everything but the seriousness. Signs warned, keep filters on at all times. Lantern yellow bulbs swung overhead, painting circles on walls lined with peeling radiation diagrams. 3 floors down, I'd have sleeping quarters, supply storage, and the communications hub. Beyond that, the archive vault, thickest concrete in the county, was sealed under 10 tons of steel. The checklists in my folder were ridiculous. Inspect hydro lines, report corrosion on blast doors, terminate remaining processes. Remaining implied something still processing, which should have been impossible. When I reported by satellite phone, the supervisor at maintenance command sounded bored. Don't power anything up, he said. It's all dead down there anyway, he laughed, a static, clipped cackle that died into the void. The call disconnected before I could answer. I slept in my car that night outside the gate, watching breath fog the glass until dawn. By sunrise, frost had printed the windshield with ice rings that looked a lot like radar sweeps. Maybe poetic, maybe a warning. At 0900 hours, I descended, clipboard in hand, flashlight on high, determination somewhere near 0. It wasn't bravery, it was inertia. Old systems deserve closure. Old ghosts, too, if they still knew how to take orders. The first corridor pressed in like the throat of a machine. The ceiling bowed with condensation.
each droplet sliding down pipes in slow metallic drips. I clicked my headlamp to wide beam, revealing decades of stillness interrupted by my breath and the soft crunch of flaked paint under boots. The air was heavy, waterlogged, almost biological. Every door bore stenciled integers, B1, B2, B3. Some were dented from the inside. Locks had fused, yet half hung ajar, as if someone had tried to exit in a hurry and forgotten what fear felt like halfway through the doorway. Inside one room, steel bunks stood in military rows like coffins set on edge. A chessboard remained mid-game, gray with dust, black queen tipped over, as if the opponent had died before finishing the move. The deeper I pushed, the more the bunker resembled an organism pretending to be architecture. Wires dangled like veins, fuses blinked sporadically. A single hallway bulb pulsed on and off in exact 12-second intervals. It reminded me of code. When I counted the rhythm, dot, dash, it spelled Q, an old call sign preface for origin unknown. That should have been charming trivia. It wasn't. An operations room opened to my right. Maps yellowed to parchment pinned beneath glass. Cold War arrows looping toward invisible enemies. Coffee mugs fossilized in circles of mold. But one computer monitor flickered when my flashlight passed, a phosphor burn echoing green across the screen. The keyboard bore a single key missing, E. Maybe scavengers, maybe something else that didn't need languages with vowels. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, each stamped closed case. I ran fingers across their edges and felt warmth, faint but real, like shared body heat. I pulled one drawer. Inside were manila folders, the top sheet soaked and slimy, yet ink still legible. Personnel locations, active rotation A. The first name printed was mine. I shut the drawer gently. Further down, a blast door separated this level from the next. On its face, someone had written in marker, now faded to rust brown. 1 entry equals 1 exit missing. Underneath, a tally of vertical strokes, the final one halfway carved before the tool must have snapped. I scanned for ventilation vents. There were none. The bunker was sealing me in breath by breath. As I turned to retreat, a distortion trembled through the concrete. A faint hum, resonant and impatient, like an old fluorescent light thinking about waking up. Then came the low crackle that I could swear crawled directly through the wiring into my bones. The unmistakable rasp of radio static rising toward words. Level 3 secured, awaiting inspection. My radio was off. The sound shivered down the hall, echoing off pipe walls until it sounded like multiple voices agreeing in sequence. Even ghosts could follow procedure. The stairwell to level 3 looked like a throat carved by floodwater. Tiles gone, handrails slick with oxidation lime. Every step creaked, but there shouldn't have been echoes this deep. When the first clang came from below, perfectly answering my cadence, I told myself it was dripping condensation forming rhythm. Then the pattern changed, matching me half a beat late, as though something was following just out of sight, keeping time. Level 3's entryway bore a faded label, communications and signal. An old PA speaker hung by one wire. As soon as I crossed the threshold, it squealed into life. A booming archival voice filled the corridor with military calm. Condition read, all personnel to stations. The sentence looped once, distorted, then bled into whispers of other announcements, unfinished briefings overlapping like layered tape. No generator thumped, no mains hummed, yet the fluorescent strips above me glowed dim amber, drawing power from inconsistency. The whole level pulsed faintly, inhaling light and exhaling shadow. Radio stacks lined the walls, mid-century beauties with Bakelite knobs and fabric speakers. Their cords curved away into conduit that disappeared under the floor, as if feeding on the Earth's magnetism itself. When I tested one dial, voices cascaded out, snippets of phone call laughter, distant Morse, and then a name, mine, spoken cleanly, without static. Sergeant Hale, report for relay verification test. I flinched. No one had used that rank since my grandfather served. The sound wasn't coming from any single unit. It moved between them, each taking its turn so the words drifted down the hall like orders being passed along a living trench. The air gained heat from nowhere. I could smell warmed plastic, as if circuits were remembering electricity. I tore open the panel of one nearby console. No battery, no drive belts, only a thick braid of dust and a line of printed instructions folded beneath the fuses, edges crisp as new. Await command confirmation. The air began humming again, a single harmonic note that bent my vision at the edges. Paired with the ghost voice, it summoned an image in my mind. Operators dotting these chairs, fingers poised above dials, waiting for missiles that never came. But something down here believed the delay had finally expired. Command Post 3, ready to proceed. The voices spoke together now, and every red status light on every console flickered to green. Procedure said document, not repair, but curiosity is a contagion. The meters still blinked weakly, so I reasoned a residual capacitor feed might explain the activity. I followed the conduit snaking toward the generator bay, a cavern halfway eaten by mineral buildup. The main turbine stood silent, its flywheel fused under inches of dust. Yet somewhere deeper a pulse beat, steady, electrical, alive. I found the auxiliary control box and flipped the maintenance breaker to test. The switch fought back like a jaw locking shut, then gave with a metallic groan. Instantly, lights fired in sequence down the corridor, each bulb flaring awake in perfect timing, like soldiers snapping to attention after decades on parade. The entire bunker brightened to a jaundiced glow. At first, I grinned. Power meant documentation, meant completion. But the consoles upstairs responded too well. Screens blinked on, printers chattered, doors unlatched with hollow applause. Every system performed tasks I hadn't ordered. In the communications room, paper spooled from teleprinters, lines of coordinates, log numbers, and one recurring phrase: readiness confirmed. A low hum became organized tone, 5 beeps repeating every 8 seconds. Old NATO alert code for signal Q Hades, standby for missile trial. The ghost of a war rehearsed itself flawlessly. I checked the instruments. Each one was running a simulation loop, yet the gauges climbed past maximum as though simulation had become execution. From nowhere, the smell of ozone thickened. Sparks traced ghostly handwriting along a switchboard. I reached to disconnect the main bus. The moment my rubber gloves touched the lever, an image flashed across the nearest monitor. Black silhouettes in gas masks crawling through that same room, shining headlights over my shoulder. They flickered like badly cut film reels, existing in between frames. The camera angle was impossible. It looked at me from behind. A printer hiccuped and spat out a single line before dying again. Power restored. Crew level 3 accounted for. Beneath it, the timestamp read 13 Feb 1962, 1432 HRS. Something metallic clattered in the hallway. Footsteps, measured, distant, approaching. Each echoed step tightened my grip on the lever. If I shut it down again, I'd sit blind in blackness with those footsteps for company. If I left it on, the bunker would keep remembering how to be alive. I pulled the lever halfway down. The lights dimmed but didn't die. The shadows lengthened and the footsteps stopped exactly outside the door. A voice rasped through the intercom, warm with static, yet conversational, almost amused. "Thank you, Sergeant Hale. Power restoration successful." I hadn't given my name to anyone today. Level 3 came alive as if shift change had just been announced. Fans coughed awake, air tasting of metal shavings and burnt oil. Somewhere above, pipes began knocking rhythmically, an ancient ventilation system remembering its heartbeat. Clipboards swung from wall hooks. A faint alarm buzzed exactly every half minute, right on Cold War schedule. The strangest part wasn't that things worked, it was that they worked correctly. Machines never age this gracefully. A service bell rang from the direction of the mess hall, a dainty sound echoing down a corridor built for war. Instinct, or maybe morbid curiosity, pulled me toward it. The mess hall appeared unspoiled by time. Tables aligned with ceremonial neatness. Aluminum trays glistened with condensation, though no water ran anywhere nearby. Steam curled lazily from a row of ceramic mugs filled with something dark and recent. When I waved a hand through it, heat clung to my skin. On one tray sat a folded napkin and a metal name tag etched Hale S. Radio Maint. I hadn't brought that tag. A noise like typing came from the next room. The personnel office door stood open. Its typewriter rattled enthusiastically under its own momentum, producing sentences faster than any human could pace. On the page, task lists, roll calls, all dated today. Every line ended the same. Report completed. Check in tomorrow. Tomorrow had been canceled decades ago, but the bunker didn't know it. I moved between corridors, storage, infirmary, and found order where there should have been ruin. Boots placed neatly under bunks, lockers latched, even the faint smell of detergent rising from folded uniforms. It was a performance, a haunting reenactment so exact it circled back to parody. When I passed a cracked mirror near the stairwell, something in it lagged behind my reflection by half a breath. My mirrored twin kept writing on an invisible board long after my hands fell still. Words lip-synced silently before vanishing. The light fixture above us flickered once for each syllable. I could feel a rhythm forming around me, like the bunker's pulse was syncing with my own. The intercom crackled again, feminine this time, the tone gentle but formal. Shift A, lunch break commencing 1200 hours. Maintain discipline. Maintain routine. Then a soft, static sigh, the electrical equivalent of contentment. The ghosts had their schedules, now they wanted me on it. And without meaning to, I looked at my watch, 11:58, and waited to see if I'd obey. At exactly noon, the lights dimmed to red. The low hum of fluorescent ballast became a roar inside my skull. Every corridor speaker clicked on at once, feeding one steady tone deep enough to rattle fillings. Then, through the wall of sound, came an unmistakable authority, an older man's voice, all clipped consonants and crisp command structure. Directive 7-4 Alpha. Execute Protocol Hades. Confirm readiness. I froze between two stretchers in the infirmary, every instinct fighting the absurd urge to stand at attention. The air tightened. Doors sealed with hydraulic sighs, their bolts slamming home like a salute. Hades, I whispered. The term buried itself in training manuals until history classrooms had excised it. Classified Missile Readiness Test, 1962, canceled before launch. Yet the comms now pulsed alive with precise radio choreography. First tone at 12:01, reply channel waiting 12 seconds apart. Each system responded in perfect sequence, as if invisible hands manned them again. Console lights bloomed green across the floor below. Through the grated walkway, I could see the old operations theater spark with renewed purpose. Loudspeakers echoed voices caught between static and ritual, checklists, coordinates, affirmation codes. The dead reenacting their finest hour. Then one of the voices singled me out. Sergeant Hale, report fuel cell pressure, awaiting verification. The bunker had written me into its cast. I should have run, but curiosity, always the coward's courage, kept me pacing the catwalk. I stared down into the command pit. For an instant, the fog of dust formed density, 3 or 4 silhouettes seated at consoles, helmets lowered, hands moving efficiently back and forth through nothing at all. On one blank screen, text appeared slowly, typed by unseen keystrokes. Final test, no abort code. Another screen updated underneath. Reaction, 5 minutes. I grabbed the maintenance mic and barked into it. Cancel simulation, power failure imminent. My voice bounced from wall to wall, rebuilding itself into a perfect repeat, each copy deeper, rougher. The response followed in chorus. Cancellation denied. Execute Protocol Hades. Sirens ignited, not the screeching kind. This was a hymn of war. Airlocks sealed. Pressure gauges surged, though nothing flowed in their lines. One by one, the silhouettes turned their heads toward me without faces, helmets blank. They nodded as though finally receiving approval. I unplugged the generator circuit at the wall. Sparks jumped. The building shrieked. Still, the countdown bled through every speaker, a choir of numbers falling toward zero. The bunker didn't need power to remember duty. It breathed electricity from memory alone. When the intercom reached -1, the ground itself exhaled, a rumble slow and rolling, more felt than heard. And beneath the tremor, radio laughter bubbled up like champagne from graves. History wasn't repeating, it was refusing to end. The commotion snapped back to silence, a vacuum so absolute my heartbeat sounded indecent. The world steadied, no tremor, no siren, just a single green indicator blinking like a pulse at the communications desk. The bunker wanted acknowledgement. I pressed the handset switch. Maintenance, Hale speaking. No static, no crackle. Instead came a perfectly calm, perfectly familiar voice. Copy, Hale. This is Topsider HQ. Stand by for status update. For a second, relief hit me like oxygen. Someone topside had intercepted the transmission. Finally.
Listen, there's a malfunction. That's affirmative, said my own voice through the line. Every syllable matched my tone exactly. Breathing cadence, micropause between words, mine. I sat very still. The hairs on my forearm rose a quarter inch toward the receiver's hum. Status check, Sergeant, the duplicate continued. Are you maintaining readiness? No, I whispered. Acknowledged. Readiness confirmed. A faint delay turned each word into echo, layering over itself, like the bunker recorded and replayed conversation at slightly different speeds. I heard another me answer from far away, deeper, older, one heartbeat late. Condition orange, new orders incoming. The room's monitors glowed to new life, each one mirroring the same image, my reflection filmed from differing angles. One matched the current view, me hunched at the console, while the others lagged behind or looked impossibly forward into gestures I hadn't yet made. I yanked the headset plug free. The speakers continued to loop, my copied voice now pleading, "Hale, don't hang up, I can explain." Something about the tone crushed me. It sounded terrified. And who wouldn't be terrified, trapped in circuitry, running eternal post-war drills? I slammed the master disconnect. Every light died, leaving only phosphor ghosts on the screens forming a question typed by unseen fingers. Who ends the order when there is no commander? I had no answer, but the bunker didn't wait for one. A klaxon blared below, and the red lights returned for the next phase. The radio clicked back on by itself, gentle as breathing. Proceed to level 2 for final verification, Sergeant. The clocks on every wall had synchronized themselves while the lights pulsed crimson. 000 hours. Midnight, though my wristwatch insisted it was barely 6. Time had given up and joined the protocol. Sirens coiled alive again. No panic this time, just precision. The bunker whispered through the vents, valves hissing open in sequence. Down the central hall, automatic doors clanked. One after another, they sealed, isolating sections like lungs compartmentalizing infection. A metallic voice rolled through the PA. Defense Condition 1, final confirmation pending. I ran toward the operations theater, boots slapping like nails against metal. Every machine there thrummed at half-life. Air filled with the warmth of burning circuits. Zinc taste coated my tongue. The ghost crew had returned to their posts. Flickers of shapes crouched at consoles, heads turned toward phantom instruments. "Stop!" I shouted. "Abort the test!" For a moment, they did freeze. The bunker itself seemed to listen. Then the main display, black for 8 hours, ignited, white code unpacking across its surface. Hades protocol active. Simulation complete. Prepare for launch. Launch? Where? There hadn't been a missile down here since before I was born. But the building disagreed. Floor panels rattled underfoot, cables twitching like nerves. The elevator I'd arrived in began descending on its own. Its call button glowed a furious red. The intercom filled with overlapping voices now, men and women, hundreds maybe, all chanting checklists. Their words telescoped into rhythm, loud enough to vibrate rivets loose. Somewhere within that drone was another voice, raw with fear, repeating my name. The echo of my duplicate, still trapped in the system, begging me to finish what history started. Hale, listen, the test never ended. If you cut power, they launch again. The metal beneath my boots reached a subtle hum, the pitch of something huge waking far below. I felt heat rising through the grates, jet heat. Instinct finally overruled curiosity. I sprinted up the stairwell, each step glowing beneath me as sensor lights tracked movement. Above, the hatch to level 2 had already sealed, emergency crank only.
I threw my weight against it until knuckles split. Behind me, the countdown rolled through the air, not digital, not human, spoken by the walls themselves. 10, 9, each reverberation shedding dust from concrete, like the building sweating off its own age. At 0, nothing exploded. Instead came a long-drawn sigh, the sound of engines that only existed as memory trying to ignite. The hum pitched lower, sustained, almost mournful. Then silence folded in again, deeper than before, as if even gravity paused to listen. Half-lit corridors stretched around me, alive but waiting. The bunker had loosed itself from the world's clock. Midnight here would never end until someone told it so. And apparently, that someone was me. I tore a gas mask from a rusted hook as I passed the equipment bay. It thunked hollow, brittle straps snapping in my gloved grip. The air was thinning, filters rasped overhead like sick lungs. The red lights returned, now pulsing at the same rhythm as my heart. Somewhere in the dark, the male voice, the general, spoke again, unhurried, heavy with satisfaction. Sergeant Hale, maintain discipline. The enemy endures. Execute the order. I am the enemy, I muttered, sprinting toward the generator corridor. The only way to end this seance of machinery was to kill its heart, the main relay. Doors that should have been manual hissed open before I touched them. The bunker anticipated me, ushering me toward its altar. In the central chamber, the relay unit loomed like a metallic reliquary, 40 feet of cables and tubes, its surface etched with decades of technicians' initials. Now its panels pulsed gently, red to white, a sleeping giant breathing. I reached the access ladder. Lines of whispering voices climbed with me, using the wind as throat. Halfway up, something changed. Weight on each rung below, a second ascent. I looked down. Silhouettes crawled from the corridor. Soldiers in blurred uniforms, faces made of lightless static, climbing without haste. Every rung they touched hissed steam. The relay hummed louder, pleased by their obedience. "Stay down," I gasped. No one listened. At the top platform, a control console blinked, "Primary link established." The lever for manual detonation sat beneath a cover of cracked plexiglass. I smashed it with a wrench. Electricity bit through the air. One more voice burst from the intercom, faint, trembling, the duplicate again. "If you do this, we cease. Everything ceases." That's the point. The shade soldiers reached the base of the ladder. Their helmets tilted up, radios whispering orders from mouths that weren't mouths. When the first one reached for my boot, its hand passed straight through. Theory and memory, not flesh. Yet the chill snapped bone deep. I could feel my pulse slowing to their cadence, the bunker sinking me into the rhythm of obedience. I yanked the lever down. The effect wasn't explosive, it was implosive. Sound folded inward. Every bulb shattered in silence, glass hanging mid-air before dropping like rain. For half a heartbeat, the figures below glowed brilliant white, saluting in unity. Then they scattered into ash, pulled toward the relay's core as if consumed by their own electricity. The relay screamed, a deep harmonic like drowning metal. then burst in a shower of fractured sparks. All lights guttered out. The silence that followed was absolute, holy, terrifying. When I opened my eyes, only the relay's central meter remained lit, bright green, calm as ever. Text scrolled across it. Order received, termination in progress. My reflection filled the glass. For a moment, I wasn't sure who had given the last command. The green meter flickered once, twice, and then the world unstitched. First came heat without flame, a pressure building behind the concrete like lungs drawing their last breath. The floor rippled. Every rivet shrieked as the bunker's spine twisted against time itself. I fell from the ladder onto a plate of steel that no longer believed in gravity. The command room tilted, chairs rolled and collided in metallic panic. Field phones swung from cords, clanging like mad bells announcing a funeral no one attended. From the dead speakers poured a single monotone: "Mission fulfilled. Stand by for debrief." Dust geysered from vents, turning the air opaque. I crawled by instinct, dragging myself through debris toward the auxiliary hatch. Above my head, the ceiling fractured, a seam of dim daylight opening like a wound. That made no sense. Daylight 3 floors underground. The corridor heaved under another tremor. Concrete sheared, walls peeling away to reveal older passages behind, like the bunker had grown layers over decades of fear. I staggered through an opening where a bulkhead door hung crooked. On the other side lay the service shaft, narrow, vertical, stretching toward whatever waited above. I slung my bag, started climbing. Behind me, the intercom sputtered. Not orders this time, just breathing. Not one pair of lungs, hundreds, sinking into the rhythm of effort. Their exhalations followed my ascent like a tide. I climbed faster until fingers bled through torn gloves. The heat below transformed to wind, a strange reversal, suction pulling downward, the bunker inhaling me back. My boots slid, but a beam of authentic morning light stabbed down from somewhere ahead. I lunged for it. When my hand struck cold metal, it wasn't a ceiling plate. It was a hatch. I rammed my shoulder against it. Fresh air spilled through cracks smelling of pine and winter. Above, surface frost glimmered under dawn that had no business being there. With a last shout, I pushed through, rolled onto brittle grass, and lay gasping beneath a sky that hummed faint static in the shape of Morse code. The final pulse of sound drifted up from the shaft, a faint, obedient whisper. Decontamination complete. Then, at last, silence. I turned to look back. The ground over the hatch shifted, closing itself with a sigh, as if the world, embarrassed, decided to hide the evidence again. 2 weeks later, the incident read like a paragraph no one would notice, buried in a logbook under Facility 419, closure confirmed. I sat in a windowless office while a young archivist in civilian clothes thumbed through photographs I'd taken. Empty halls, dead consoles, no anomalies captured. She congratulated me on excellent documentation. Her expression softened when she slid one final photo across the table. I hadn't taken this one. It showed me standing in front of the relay, surrounded by an intact crew of 6 uniformed men. Their faces were hidden behind radios. "Someone emailed this to headquarters," she said quietly. "No address, no metadata." Then she forced a polite smile. "Anyway, congratulations on bringing history to a close." History didn't feel closed. Since escaping, I'd begun hearing faint transmissions through ordinary noise. Static between songs, elevator hums, blood rushing behind my ears. Always the same cadence, 5 beats, 12 seconds apart. A readiness check. I'd unplugged every radio at home. Didn't matter. The feedback just switched to plumbing, to wind through the eaves, to my phone vibration buzzing out the old code. Cue Hades. Sleep became rationed. One night I woke to the hiss of my bedside clock resetting, its digital face blinking 00 over and over until it finally displayed condition yellow, await orders. I smashed it, but the characters burned onto the inside of my eyelids. Yesterday, the archivist called again. She sounded hesitant. "Mr. Hale, small question. The audio tape you turned in won't stop recording. It keeps picking up something. Voices asking for confirmation. We tried to erase it and the tape grew." She laughed nervously, as if reading off someone else's script, and then asked the one question that snapped everything back open. "Would you like to come confirm the termination personally?" That's how it happens. A single polite request, and the wheel turns again. The bunker replacing its missing operator. It never wanted one. It needed rotation. One post vacated, one filled. Tonight, just before I started writing this report, every radio in the neighborhood clicked on in unison. A quiet male voice, the general, thanked me for maintaining readiness standards. The signal wasn't bouncing from underground anymore. It came down from clouds that glowed the color of rust. I should destroy this account. I won't. Maybe someone else needs the warning. If you inherit a task that feels older than sense, don't obey out of habit. Routines survive even when people don't. Somewhere, something still salutes your reflex to follow orders. If you ever hear 5 beeps in evenly spaced intervals, don't answer. Don't even breathe. That's history trying to remind you it's not finished. So here's my final command. Break the loop. Comment if you hear the signal, because silence is how it starts again.